They said it was just a gold business. That's all. Scrap metal. Melting down old chains, recycled rings, leftover jewelry from pawn shops and estate sales. On paper, it looked like a quiet operation, low profile, modest margins, nothing that raised alarms. Just men moving metal. But the numbers didn't match the story. Because the truth was, this wasn't about gold. It was about cash. Piles of it. Bundled tight in plastic wrap. Stuffed in duffel bags. Carried through back doors. Pushed through private banks with no questions asked. In total, £266 million passed through their hands. That's more than some small countries handle in a year. And yet, almost no one noticed. For years, it worked. No robberies. No guns. No threats. Just spreadsheets, shell companies, and false invoices. It was invisible. Elegant. And nearly untouchable. Until someone got too comfortable. Police didn't get tipped off by a frantic call or a dramatic raid. It started with a quiet discrepancy. One number out of place in a ledger. An audit that didn't make sense. A name that kept appearing on documents but never showed up in person. From that single thread, investigators began pulling. And what they found was staggering. They weren't chasing gang members or drug lords. These were businessmen. Educated. Connected. Men with clean shoes and quiet smiles. They walked in and out of banks like any other executive. But what they were doing was washing drug money, fraud proceeds, and untold criminal fortunes into clean, spendable wealth. This wasn't just a loophole. This was a machine. Engineered. Polished. And deadly efficient. And still, one question lingers: how many others were part of it? Because while 4 men were sentenced, Gregory Frankel, Daniel Rawson, Harun Rashid, and Arjun Baba, the investigation hinted at more. Unnamed individuals. Foreign accounts. Untouched millions. Some say the full story hasn't come out yet. Others say it never will. This is the story of the £266 million gold scam. Of how 4 men used the appearance of legitimacy to move mountains of cash. Of how a fake business masked a criminal empire. And of how close they came to getting away with it. The year was 2016. In the north of England, the industrial sprawl of Bradford hummed with quiet resilience. Old textile mills stood beside new developments. Commerce moved slowly but steadily. Nearby, in Leeds, business was booming, tower cranes etched the skyline, and the city centre buzzed with economic promise. Further south, London, as always, was a world of its own. In Westminster, wealth wasn't displayed, it was assumed. Hidden behind stone facades and private gates were men who didn't make noise, they made moves. Somewhere in the spaces between these cities, a plan was unfolding. A plan that would stretch across 8 years, pass through dozens of banks, and touch 3 continents. On the surface, it was a gold trading enterprise. Harmless. Legal. Necessary, even. A company registered to deal in second-hand scrap gold, recycling precious metals from unwanted rings, broken necklaces, and pawned heirlooms. It didn't attract attention. It wasn't supposed to. Gregory Frankel was the architect. Sharp, methodical, and precise. He understood systems, how to use them, how to exploit them, and more importantly, how to make money through them without ever appearing in the spotlight. Daniel Rawson, his right hand, was based in Scarcroft, an affluent suburb of Leeds. He was the logistics man. He handled the flow of paper, of money, of silence. Nothing extravagant. Always careful. Always under radar. Harun Rashid was the bridge. A man with connections and credibility. Based in Bradford, he brought a local touch. He knew the streets. He knew the people. And he knew how to keep things moving. Then came Arjun Baba, younger, louder, flashier. He moved through Westminster like he belonged there. Designer suits. Expensive watches. Private lounges. He was the kind of man who smiled too easily, who made people lower their guard just long enough to miss what was really happening. He was the face they needed in a world where appearance was everything. Together, they formed a machine. It started simply. A few cash deposits here. A few vague invoices there. The business registered as legitimate. No police interest. No regulatory flags. Money came in. Gold went out. Everyone was happy. But this wasn't gold. This was cash. Huge volumes of it. In some cases, over £1 million deposited in a single day. Carried in holdalls. Counted by hand. Bagged, sealed, and passed off as proceeds from a scrap gold sale. Anonymous bank transfers. Fake documentation. Tax-free claims. Courier routes that zigzagged between cities. For years, it worked. Flawlessly. Silently. Unquestioned. Until questions started appearing. A single discrepancy in a customs form. A warehouse inventory that listed gold on paper but stored nothing of value in reality. A bank manager curious about the volumes, too high, too fast, too clean. What began in 2016 as a low-key business had, by 2024, become a full-blown investigation, one of the largest money laundering prosecutions in UK history. And when it finally reached the courtroom, even seasoned prosecutors were stunned by the scale. £266 million. Vanished through a business that claimed to be trading broken chains and damaged earrings. But this wasn't recycling. It was something else entirely. And it left a trail across cities, continents, and institutions that should have known better. This was only the beginning. It began with a single spreadsheet. Buried deep inside a stack of seized files, standard accounting data, dull and dry on the surface, was a number that didn't make sense. An invoice that claimed a gold shipment worth £1.2 million. But there was no record of physical delivery. No transportation logs. No insurance slips. No customs records. It was flagged. Quietly. And sent to West Yorkshire Police's Economic Crime Unit. They took a closer look. What they found cracked the door open. The first thread led to a warehouse in Bradford. Registered to a company with an impressive name. But when investigators got inside, they found nothing. No gold. No processing equipment. Not even a single melting pot. Just empty shelves and the faint smell of stale dust. Then came the paperwork. Invoices marked with vague descriptions, recycled gold batch number 842, melted scrap lot 919. All identical in format. All traced to companies that, on closer inspection, did not exist. Shells. Empty legal shells, set up and dissolved within months. Each used once. Sometimes twice. Then abandoned. The emails were next. At first glance, they read like typical business exchanges. Polite. Professional. But patterns began to emerge. Strange references to sunshine loads, heat-treated shipments, and midnight batches. Investigators realized they weren't reading about gold at all. They were reading about cash. Coded. Led in euphemism. But the meaning was unmistakable. Surveillance teams were deployed. Plainclothes officers started watching drop locations. Warehouse units in Leeds. Private garages in London. Nondescript shops in Bradford. Every few days, a courier would arrive, always different, always carrying a heavy duffel bag. They never stayed longer than 5 minutes. No signatures. No receipts. Just a handoff. CCTV footage showed it all. One courier made 12 trips in a single month, delivering nearly £4 million. And every time, same routine. Gloves. No phone. Eyes forward. In and out. Then they followed Arjun Baba. He was harder to pin down. He didn't touch the cash. He didn't visit the warehouses. He operated above it all. But his spending told another story. Multiple first-class flights to Dubai are 3 in 1 month. Receipts from high-end jewelers in Mayfair. Hotel stays in suites that cost more per night than most families earn in a month. One day, surveillance watched him leave a meeting in Westminster. 20 minutes later, he walked into a boutique car dealer in Chelsea and placed a deposit on a Lamborghini Urus, in cash. The investigators had seen enough. The emails. The fake companies. The unexplained wealth. It was too clean, too systematic, too polished. This wasn't disorganized criminal behavior. It was a structured operation. Industrial in scale. Executed with corporate precision. But they still needed a break. It came from an overlooked folder on a seized laptop. Inside, a series of scanned receipts. Each one for scrap gold. Each one issued to a different company, with nearly identical amounts, just a few pence apart. Dozens of them. Dated just days apart. Cross-checking with bank records revealed the truth. The receipts were fake. The companies were fake. And the gold? It never existed. The only real thing was the money. £266 million, laundered with a level of control and detail the Economic Crime Unit had rarely seen. They weren't laundering thousands. They were cleaning millions. And no one even noticed until someone made a mistake. No guns. No blood. No noise. Just paper. Paper that lied. And now, it was all unraveling. It all came crashing down in the spring of 2022. Years of whispers, coded emails, and anonymous tip-offs had finally converged into something tangible, something irrefutable. A single ledger. Bound in black leather. Hidden beneath floorboards in a rented office space in central Leeds. It was dusty. Weathered. Handwritten. Inside, officers found what no bank, no auditor, no accountant had ever seen before, a day-by-day account of cash volumes moved, amounts laundered, names abbreviated, and coded references to drop locations and delivery times. It wasn't digital. It wasn't encrypted. It was raw. And it was damning. Each page told a story. The 11th of October, 2021, £480,000, Beeham route, confirmed. The 13th of October, 2021, £1.1 million, AB greenlighted, sent to D. The 14th of October, 2021, £670,000, offload secure. Masked. Dozens of entries. Daily. Some days saw over £2 million cleaned and reintroduced into the banking system under the illusion of legitimate business activity. Officers flipped page after page, and the scale hit them. This wasn't months of laundering. This was years. And if the figures in the ledger were accurate, they were looking at over £250 million. But still, one question remained. Where was the gold? They had the ledgers. The bank records. The emails. But the supposed product, the scrap gold that supposedly passed through warehouses in Bradford, Leeds, London, was nowhere to be found. And so, they went looking. 3 days later, they raided a warehouse listed in company records as a central hub for processing and melting gold. A team from the Economic Crime Unit, Forensics, and HMRC descended at dawn. They expected security. Equipment. Lockboxes. Even industrial furnaces. What they found was nothing. Just dusty shelves, a few abandoned chairs, and the humming echo of fluorescent lights. No smelting gear. No gold dust. No weighing scales. Nothing. Investigators stood in silence. One leaned against a wall, shaking his head. Another whispered, "There is no gold." There never was. And that's when the Dubai connection surfaced. Among the seized computers and hard drives was an innocuous spreadsheet titled Client Export Summary. It seemed harmless until one officer noticed repeated transactions coded at DUB01, DUB05, DUB main. Cross-referenced with shipping data, the puzzle snapped together. The money, once laundered, wasn't staying in the UK. It was being sent offshore. Clean. Tax-free. And bound for Dubai. Dozens of wires. Some masked as metal exports, others as consulting fees. Hundreds of thousands. Millions, all sent to shell entities with no employees, no product, no trace. But the most explosive moment was still to come. During the investigation, a name began surfacing repeatedly in the background. James Stunt. A socialite. A businessman. Former son-in-law to the late Formula One tycoon Bernie Ecclestone. Tabloid gold. High profile. Loud. Glamorous. Stunt's businesses were tied, on paper, to companies associated with the laundering ring. His signature appeared on forms. His name appeared in email. CCS surveillance showed him at a lunch meeting with Arjun Baba weeks before the initial arrests. He was arrested. And then, he was put on trial. The press swarmed the courthouse. Tabloids splashed headlines across the UK. Gold Empire or House of Cards? James Stunt, kingpin or scapegoat? Courtroom sketches showed him seated with calm composure, flanked by solicitors. Evidence was presented, emails, documents, and testimonies. But the prosecution couldn't pin direct knowledge or intent to him. In May 2023, James Stunt was acquitted. He walked free. But the scandal stuck. With every bank statement and suitcase full of notes, the puzzle grew. But one question haunted detectives. Where was the gold? The truth? There was no gold. Just lies polished to perfection, invoices forged with surgical precision, warehouses filled with nothing but echoes, and men in suits, moving silently through cities, laundering more in a single day than most people will ever see in a lifetime. And as the gavel came down, one truth remained: they had fooled the system. For years, until their own paper trail, finally, gave them away. July 2024. Leeds Crown Court was silent as the judge delivered his words with gravity measured in centuries of British law. This was not an ordinary sentencing. It wasn't just about crime. It was about scale, about audacity, and about how close the system had come to failing altogether. Gregory Frankel, once a respected businessman, now the orchestrator of one of the largest laundering networks in UK history, was sentenced to 11 years and 8 months. He didn't flinch. He stood in silence, eyes lowered. Daniel Rawson, quiet and composed throughout the proceedings, received 10 years and 10 months. His role as the operations handler had been essential. The judge called him the machine behind the illusion. Harun Rashid, whose reputation in Bradford once earned him trust in communities and boardrooms alike, was sentenced to 10 years. His betrayal ran deep, and not just through paperwork, but through neighborhoods and families who once admired him. Arjun Baba, the public face, the man who moved through Westminster with effortless charm, was handed 11 years. The court didn't mince words. He smiled through fraud, laughed through theft, built his life on deception, and cost others theirs. The case sent shockwaves through the financial world. Banks, already on edge after years of scandals, responded fast. Dozens of institutions launched emergency audits, internal fraud monitoring systems were torn down and rebuilt, training programs for frontline staff were rewritten from scratch. Some UK banks hired former intelligence officials to rework security infrastructure. And it didn't stop there. Dubai regulators, long criticised for lax oversight on foreign transactions, were pulled into the fire. Under international pressure, the UAE Central Bank issued urgent new compliance orders. Multiple companies connected to offshore laundering in the case were deregistered overnight. 3 British-Dubai banking relationships collapsed within weeks. It was no longer just a UK scandal. It had become a global reckoning. But while institutions scrambled to clean up, the personal cost told a different story. Inside those courtrooms, as verdicts were read, families sat frozen. A wife of 18 years, crying quietly behind her sunglasses. A teenage daughter staring blankly at the floor. A father, once proud, leaving without saying a word. 3 Marriages ended in silence. 2 Children pulled from private schools. 1 Elderly mother hospitalized the night after sentencing. Crime doesn't just shatter laws. It fractures legacies. And then, the part few talked about, because it wasn't in the press. 3 Suspects connected to the case vanished, known only by their initials in court papers, their names redacted, their roles in the operation vital, but shadowy. Authorities confirmed warrants are active. Interpol has been notified, but as of today, they remain missing. And maybe that's the part that lingers. For all the convictions, for all the evidence, the network wasn't completely broken, just fractured, quietly watching, waiting. They claimed to sell scrap gold. What they really sold was deceit. They fooled banks, they fooled governments, they fooled families, but they couldn't fool the law forever. The world may never recover all that was lost, but in that courtroom, in those final moments of silence, justice echoed loud, clear, and finally, unavoidable. What do you think? Was this justice served, or just the tip of something far bigger? Should financial institutions face tougher penalties when they miss red flags like this, and how many more gold businesses out there are hiding something far worse? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. Hit that like button if this story shocked you. Subscribe for more in-depth true crime investigations just like this, and if you think someone you know needs to hear what really happened in this case, share this video with them. Because the truth, sometimes it's hidden in plain sight, and someone is always watching.